welcome to Pricing College with your host Joanna Wells
and Aidan Campbell.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about movies, the movie industry, the differences in pricing between Netflix, potentially, Foxtel, and also the cinemas. And we were thinking greatly about how pricing is now determined a lot about in the way we consume movies. Now, Netflix is a great example of our new habits as movie watchers. It offers us infinite variety at a low price. We like cheap, and it's offering like pretty much infinite movies, documentaries, the whole lot, in a way for free. Many generations, like younger generations now, have been brought up on this new way of consuming movies, and now there's a real difference between sort of the older generation who've used to a more event-based cinema going movie experience, and younger generations who are used to just like consuming middle of the road stuff at a drop of a hat. There's no experience behind it. So we're really interested today to talk a bit more about the consumption of movies and the changing of those types of patterns over the years.
Yeah, my personal view is that Netflix, it's obviously very successful. It's obviously gained a huge number of customers, huge number of paying customers. One of the issues about it, I do think that they really could push the perceived value by slightly changing the pricing mechanism. Let's say you currently pay $15 a month, whether you watch a movie or 1,000 movies, it's the same fee. So to many ways of looking at it, you almost see your TV bill as a utility. You don't think about it when you're watching the movie, so you do perceive the movie as being free. In the world of pricing, there's the old saying that if you sell something for 1 cent versus for free, the demand for that product will drop infinitely or hugely. If you think about it in your area, if a restaurant gives free smoothies or free burgers or free sandwiches one day as a promotion, there'll be a queue around the block. Even if the people will queue for half an hour to get a free sandwich, even if it costs them $5, they wouldn't do work for $5 for that half hour. So the demand for seemingly free things goes through the roof. But with that, there is the side effect that people don't appreciate what they have. It's almost as if it's worthless because the price tag makes it seem psychologically worthless to them. And one of the big complaints you'll hear about people on Netflix is they can't focus. They can't choose a movie and stick with the movie, or they'll spend half an hour flicking through movies trying to pick one and then end up not picking any. So I personally believe that is a factor of not having to pay, not psychologically having to give a fee in your mind for making that choice.
I suppose, when people do have too much choice, I suppose the value and the enjoyment of watching that movie does decrease. They just, that higher price point makes people pay attention, makes their brain switch on their brain and think, okay, what am I actually watching? Why am I watching them? It makes them ask those questions. And then having that sort of lazy movie watching experience, it's uninquiring, you're sort of laying back, popcorn, not really thinking about it. It's more like background noise and moving colours. And I honestly think that's what a lot of people want, and they're just relaxing, they're switching off, and Netflix sort of does the job. But there's another segment of the population that has got an inquiring mind. They do take, they want a little bit more curation with their movies. They want to know what's good, why it's good. Like the old-fashioned movie critics, Barry Norman. I don't know if anyone can remember them. He might not have been the best critic, but he was there at the time critiquing different movies for a reason, to cater to people that had an actual interest in the films. And that really has just gone.
Yeah, I do believe it has gone. I think there's no real, like you look at Netflix and there are categories, etc., but there aren't really, the top 100 movies recommended by this critic or that critic, or there's very limited aspects of that. There's not even, periods of seminars where you have the great directors, there are movies and you can go through them. It's really sold as a popcorn consumer, easy consumption mechanism. But I really do believe people, if you ask them, do they want infinite for free? They'll always say yes. People will say yes, indeed. I always say, imagine you're on a cruise ship, hopefully when this whole COVID crisis ends, when cruise ships are back running, or even the example of a Las Vegas casino. In the buffet, First few days, everyone's eating as much as they can get their hands on. They're consuming way more than they would usually do. Give it another week, give it a couple of weeks, people will probably revert back to their normal consumption habits. They could choose infinite amounts, but you know what? They'll probably just have an egg on toast, or a bowl of cornflakes. And that's what life is about to a large extent. People initially, or for high days and holidays, want infinite. But in reality, they don't. In reality, if you give them too much, they don't appreciate it. There's that saying with children: if you give them too much early on, you'll spoil them. Young sports stars is a very similar concept. People, and again, this is a value judgment getting away from pricing, but it overlaps into pricing. When people have to work for something and actually put their money down to get something, it sort of signifies that they've made a choice. And when they've made a choice, that means they're committed to it. When you commit to something, you have a natural willingness not to back away from it. So you start the movie, you've paid for that movie, even if it's just $1, you paid for that movie, and you're much more likely to see it through and to watch the whole movie than you would if you paid nothing.
But the interesting thing here as well is that there's, generations now being brought up with just Netflix. That's all they know. That's where their mind's at. They don't know there was anything better. They don't. I think we were discussing this before, and they probably don't even know like who Tom Cruise is. Their knowledge of actual movies is very limited, and so they won't ask those questions. They won't be prepared to pay that money because they don't have an alternative. They don't have something to compare it with. And when I think about Netflix pricing model, what are the criteria is literally based on the quality of the picture. That's what their audience wants. It wants a high definition quality picture, and it wants fast download speed on multiple devices. Now that sounds to me like it is appealing to young people. There's no fence or value fence based on what they're watching, and I suppose there is in terms, or even how they're consuming it. They've already got that for free, so it doesn't matter. It's not, so they're not even thinking about that. So they can get whatever they want. So it's literally just quality. That's what sort of the younger generation want. They want lots of it. They don't care what they're watching, and they want it to be on multiple devices. And I think that Netflix has literally encapsulated that. Now, if I compare their pricing model with something like Foxtel is really appealing more to that old-fashioned sort of, a movie as an event. People who like watching movies or have an interest in something, such as sport, such as movies, documentaries. Their pricing structure is based on bundles and add-ons based on somebody's interests. But the thing is, if you have no interest in anything, will that pricing model that Foxtel is using over time become obsolete? Because at the moment, people are just content with watching middle of the road nothingness. And, over time, if they're not exposed to anything else, that's all they'll know, and that they'll be satisfied with that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think to some extent the production companies, the Warner Brothers, the 20th Century Foxes, they're almost cannibalizing their own offer. What their golden goose is the long-term value of big business, the star system. And I think a large amount of these have been just ground down. Obviously there's been a huge investment in television series over the last number of years. But I even remember when, it shows how old I am, when George Clooney was cast as Batman, which was quite out of character. I think he'd come from the TV series ER at that time, and people asked him, did he see any difference in being in the movies? And he said it was a whole step up because people viewed TV stars as a lower level than movie stars. That might have changed nowadays, but I think a lot of young people almost view YouTubers who basically self-produce using their own telephones and put stuff up on YouTube for free consumption. They're seen as big stars by many kids and teenagers, etc., and young adults, as traditional movie stars are. You could even argue that the Hollywood star system has almost broken down. There hasn't really been big movie stars created in the last 10 years to the extent that there would have been in the 80s and early 90s. It's almost as if that conveyor belt of stars has stopped. And is that because people don't appreciate, they're not investing with their own money into the product? Perhaps.
I know we argued before that, Netflix is a dominant player, but maybe not so for long, because you've got, Amazon Prime coming into the picture, and they may dominate. But interestingly, it'd be something like, YouTube, completely free, access content from anyone. from anywhere, that really is the market disruptor here, because younger people are even thinking that Netflix is old hat now, and are literally just watching YouTube and TikTokers, and that's for them. That's what they want to consume. And literally, when you think of what TikTok is, it's very, very short, like up to 6 seconds, up to a couple of minutes of individuals doing various odd things here and there. But that's the attention span. That's consumption, that people want to watch 6 minutes of something, nothing too highbrow, but at the same time, it's still specializing, because that person can choose areas that they're interested in, like dance, comedy, whatever it is, and there'll be something available. So even saying that, even Amazon Prime might be an old hat in a few years, and that YouTube and TikTok are the things that they should really be watching out for.
Yeah, I think that's it from me. Yeah, look, it's an interesting sector. I think everybody has fundamentally some interest in movies and cinema and entertainment. Whether you're prepared to pay for it or not, or whether you're prepared to go to the movies or not, is a different question. But whether it's the gossip magazines or watching the movie itself. So yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and we'll probably revisit it in a future episode.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan.